Hey everybody, welcome to Just Plain Fun. This is your host MJ, and I promised y'all this advanced quiz of the on the lever caps, and I have not delivered it until now, but here we are. So we are ready. And before we dive in, of course, I've got to cover some administrative things. So first off, my sources, just like always, it all starts with Roger K. Smith's type studies. So a lot of the information came from volume 1 and 2 of P. Tampia, and then John Walter's Stanley Tools, which incidentally, John Walter got a lot of his information from the original type study. And then in this case, there's another one specifically on the 113, because as y'all know from the first quiz, there are a couple 113 caps on there. And so some of the information came from there. And then there are some Bailey related caps. And so that information came from Leonard Bailey and his woodworking planes. And then also some various sources on the internet, such as Patrick Leach's Blood and Gore. So unlike the first quiz, this one is actually intended to be open book. So if you just have enough time in your day and you're that bored and you want to score really well on this test, or this quiz rather, then I encourage you to get out the books, have your browser open so you can look them up on the internet, or just try and go from memory and just see what kind of score you get. Either way is fine with me. But I intentionally made this ridiculously hard to make it as challenging as possible for those really smart folks out there. There's somewhere between, I don't know, 20 and 100 points available on this. Let's just see how you do. And let's go ahead and jump in. Oh, and one more thing. Y'all know I'm a part seller. And so since the first video was filmed and released, some lever caps have actually sold. And so there might be a couple of them that are not featured in this video that were in the first one. Y'all are just going to have to forgive me for that. But if you'll remember, this one was in the first one. Remember, this is that Type 2 Stanley lever cap for a conventional Stanley Bailey bench plane. And what we were looking for on question number 1 is, what were the years that Type 2 planes were produced by Stanley? 3, 2, 1. They were from 1869 to 1872. That's when the Type 2 planes were produced. And if you remember from the first video, this is a Marsh plane right here. We know it's Marsh because it's got the number etched into the back of the lever cap. And so what we're looking for on this one is, what company did Stanley buy out and therefore own that led to them also owning Marsh? So in other words, Marsh sold out to this company that Stanley owned. And the answer that we're looking for is Union. So Marsh sold out to Union. Union belonged to Stanley. Cap number 3. Remember, this is that number 5.5 cap. We know because it's got the 2 1/4 etched on the back. So this is for a Stanley Bailey bench plane, a number 5.5. Specifically, could be a Type 11 or a Type 12, or even a Type 10 for that matter. What we're looking for here is, what year did the number 5.5 caps go from 2 1/4, not just the caps, but the entire plane, the blade rather. What year did the blade go from 2 1/4 to 2 3/8, which then matched the number 6s and the number 7s? And the answer that we're looking for on that one is 1939. And then this next one is a Bailey Victor cap. This is from a number 6, but it would also fit a number 7. And I intentionally made most of the Bailey-related questions ridiculously difficult on purpose, because that's just the kind of guy I am. And what we're looking for here is, what year was Leonard Bailey granted the trademark registration for trade name Victor? What year was Leonard Bailey granted trademark registration for trade name Victor? We're looking for 1876 is when that was issued. And then the Bailey Tool Company. Remember this one from the first video? We're looking for, what city and state were Bailey Tool Company planes made in? And the answer we're looking for is Woonsocket, Rhode Island. This is from that Stanley gauge. And we're looking for, what state were Stanley gauge, excuse me, let me back up. What state were gauge planes made in? So that's including prior to Stanley buying them. What state were they originally produced in? And if you said New Jersey, then you are correct. If you said Vineland or Vinland, however it's pronounced, Vineland, New Jersey, then you give yourself an extra point because you knew it right down to the city. This is, we know, is going to be a type 16, and we know that based on the features here that I won't go into detail because I don't want to give this one away. But that patent number right there, the 1918750, what does that patent number signify? I think I might have even mentioned it in the first video. So if you watched it and you remember, you'll already know. If you said that that patent number signifies the kidney hole as opposed to the keyhole, then you are correct and you get 1 point for that. This is for a Stanley number 118 block plane. And I think I may have covered this in the first video as well. So these are kind of some freebies here. We're looking for who specifically were these block planes targeted for. Who were they specifically sold to? The all steel, supposedly indestructible block planes. Who was the target audience for those? And if you said schools and specifically students, either one of those answers are correct and give yourself 1 point. This is going to be a lever cap for Bailey Victor block plane right here, and it would actually fit numerous block planes. And what we're looking for here is in 1876, how many different Victor block planes were offered by Leonard Bailey and you know, his company, which was the Victor Bailey line, Bailey Victor line. How many different block planes were offered in 1876? And the answer that we're looking for, that I think maybe 3 people are going to get right without looking it up, is 11. There were 11 different Victor block planes offered. Also making a reappearance from the first video, we've got this little guy, the Pexto. And Pexto actually made planes for numerous companies. They were typically low-end planes, and you know that I don't have any love for Pextos. But you might have seen these on a Worth, on a Capewell, on a Franklin. What I'm looking for on this one is what 3 names make up the name Pexto? What 3 names did they combine to come up with their company name? And the answer is Peck, Stow, and Wilcox. So Peck is P-E-C-K, Stow, S-T-O-W. Well, there might have been an E on the end of that. And Wilcox. So, and then combined together, Pexto, P-E-X-T-O. So if you said Peck, Stow, and Wilcox, then you can give yourself 1 point. Is that too difficult? That's probably too difficult. All right, this is from a number 113 compass plane, from a Stanley compass plane. And we're looking for what was the last type or year, either one. You get 2 points if you get both, but what was the last type and or last year for this design right here? And I'm going to show the next design here in just a second. So this was last used on the Type 8. And produced in 1897. And that is specifically from the type study book that is out on the number 113. This is the later style. And as you can see, it matches the regular Stanley bench planes. It is the same width as a number 3, but it's a little bit longer. So it's a little bit longer to cover that extra distance for the 113. But that C that's on the back, we're looking for what types would the C have been on. And the answer that we're looking for is type 10 through type 16 for the compass planes. Prior to that, i.e. the type 9s, just had a faint 113. So if you've seen that on the back of a compass plane lever cap 113, that was the type 9s. And then types 10 through 16 per that compass plane type study had the C on the back. So yeah, I told you this is going to be ridiculously hard. So, you know, it's the advanced quiz. This is what we got to do. So this right here is from a Shelton. It was their version of kind of the auto set. And these are junk. Excuse me. You guys let me know if you've ever actually taken a consistent and really fine shaving with one of these before. But what we're looking for on this Shelton is, you see that patent number on there. That same patent number is on all the different sizes. The 3, 4, 5. It's on all the different sizes. But what year was the patent 1914609? What year was that patent issued? It was issued in 1933 was the answer that we're looking for. This is from a Standard Rule Company, which, by the way, was established in 1872. So they've been around a real long time, or excuse me, they were around a real long time. They started making planes in 1883. So 1883, they started making them. So what we're looking for here is what company did they merge with? And I'll give you a hint. It was in 1888. So those of you that have memorized all of P. Tampia, you'll immediately know that that was the Upson Nut Company. So the Standard Rule Company merged with the Upson Nut Company in 1888. This one is a Miller's Falls. And Miller's Falls, the company, was around since the late 1860s. So 1868-ish. But when, excuse me, let me back up. When did they make their first plane? This is the downside of not doing as many takes. When did they make their first plane? When did they make their first hand plane? That's what we're looking for. Miller's Falls, when did they make their first hand plane? It was not until 1929. 1929 when they made their first one. And if you said March 1st, 1929, because you're just that much of a Miller's Falls fanatic, go ahead and give yourself 2 extra points on that. So this is a lever cap from a Sargent. And what we're looking for on this one is what city in Connecticut did Sargent set up shop in? Where did they produce their planes? What city in Connecticut? And the answer we're looking for is New Haven. So they tried to go to New Britain, but there wasn't any space there. They couldn't find any land to build their factory. And so they went to New Haven instead. And then this is a Stanley transitional. So in the same vein, I just showed you a Sargent. This is a Stanley. And what we're looking for is what company is better, Sargent or Stanley? And y'all should know there's only one answer to that question. And it is Stanley. Stanley's number 1. If you said that, give yourself an extra, 20 points for that if you said Stanley. If you said Sargent, go ahead and subtract 50 from your score. And if you're in the negative now, I'm sorry. We're actually going to make this one a little bit easier. Y'all probably remember I showed this one in the first video. If you watch it, you've seen it. A nice deep etch for that. The Sweetheart logo there. And what we're looking for is what decade would this have appeared in this plane, on a plane? Just what decade? That's all we're looking for. And the answer is the 1920s. So, and more specifically, that was when the Stanley Rule and Level Company and Stanley Works actually merged. And I covered that in another video where I talked about the history of Stanley. Hopefully you've watched that. If not, make sure you go back and check it out. But that was about the time when this cap came out, was the early 1920s. And that was around the same time that the two companies merged. So this right here, this is a thinner one. It's a little skinnier. Not as wide as the conventional bench, or the most of the block planes, block planes. And so this is from a number 60.5 specifically. It's for a later one. It's got the blue. And what I'm looking for is, how do we know that this is for a 60.5? Well, it's because it's painted. Because the number 60s, which were very much the same plane, but just a different design. Well, a different finish than I guess I would be better to say. This one's painted, and so that's how we know it's a 60.5. If it had a nickel plating or like a chrome look to it, a nickel plated finish, then you would know that that was a number 60 instead. We're down to the last row. How we doing so far? What's your score sitting at? Right here, we've got a Lee Nielsen lever cap, specifically from a number 7. Not sure why there's a 5 on the back of it, because it's definitely from a number 7. We're looking for what year did Thomas Lee Nielsen start making planes, start making hand planes? And the answer to that is 1981. And what was the first plane that Lee Nielsen made? Just came up with this one off the top of my head. It was a number 95. So if you said a number 95 for that, give yourself an extra point. This is for the more typical block plane. Why do I keep saying bench? It's for a more typical block plane. So we're going to give this almost a freebie, looking for what size is this? How wide is that cap? Pretty sure I covered that in the first video. So if you said 1 5/8", that is your freebie. So you get an extra point for that. Here we're looking at number 140 skewed block plane. And we're looking for what was the last year that the Stanley number 140 was produced. The last year that these were made. And the answer, we're looking for 1943. So it was actually during the war when the last one of those was made. And everybody's going to recognize this as number 78. It's from a rabbit plane. And we're looking for what were the years that this was made. What was the year that the number 78 rabbit plane was produced? The total years. And you could say it's a trick question, or you could just say there's multiple answers. And the answer is from 1884 to 1984 was when this particular version of the 78 was made. And there were some changes over the years. This is more a later cap right here. But there is actually still, to this day, there's still a version of the number 78 being made. It's got a different name. It's still got a 78 in the title, but it's a little bit different. It's not the same as the old school one. And we're going to combine these two. You guys got some opportunity to get some free extra points out there, so we're not too worried about the total number of points available. Name the company that would have produced both of these lever caps. If you know your stuff, you know. And I think I talked about it in the first video. And the answer is Stanley. Because Stanley, yeah, that's what they did. They went around and bought everybody else out. Or produced planes for other companies, i.e. Ward's Master. And then they bought out Union and started putting Union on the lever cap. If y'all remember from the first video, this is that S4 or S5 lever cap. And what we're looking for here are what are two of the ways. There are multiples, but what are two ways that we know that this is unique to the S4? And we know it's different from a regular 2-inch keyhole Stanley lever cap that would have appeared on any other bench plane. So one is the red background. Definitely covered that in the first video. And then per Patrick Leach's write-up in Blood and Gore, this is actually made from a malleable iron, and it has a different pattern of recesses on the back. And that is a true story. Remember, I said this Union was made by Stanley. If you look at other Stanley bench planes, you'll see that it has a similar design to this. But you can see that the pattern of recesses is different on the back. And so this is a good point to know if you happen to run across an S4 or S5 out in the wild, and you can look at the back and you can identify whether it is a cap that is correct for it, even if, say, the red paint has worn off or if it's been painted over. This is our Seagley number 4 right here. See, nice enough to put a little 4 on the back of that. And so what we're looking for here is when Stanley bought out Seagley, that buyout actually did not include their bench planes. So Stanley did not get the Seagley bench plane line when they bought them out. And so we're looking for who did. Who took over the bench plane line when Stanley bought Seagley? And the answer that we're looking for is Edwin Hahn. And that is why the Hahn planes and the Seagley planes are often so similar. And there was actually a complaint, a formal complaint lodged against me because I didn't include a record cap in the first video. And so I had to correct that oversight. And so here we are. Here it is, the record lever cap. It's a nice, pretty one. And what we're looking for here is who is the premier collector and restorer of record planes in America, not including over in England. So in America, the premier collector and restorer of record planes who can actually put a nickel plating back on it to look as good or better than this. And the answer that we're looking for is the potato himself, Eric O'Gray. So if you said the potato, or if you said Eric O'Gray, or any combination of that, then give yourself an extra 5 points for that. And last and certainly not least, we have the Stanley Type 20 lever cap. We know by the yellow background, this is going to be from a Type 20, or could even be from a Cordovan or Cordovan. But for the purpose of this video, we're going to say it's a Type 20. And we're looking for what were the years that Type 20 planes were produced. Of course, the type study came along years later. It's not like Stanley was following it while they were producing it. But what were the years for the Type 20? And the answer we're looking for is 1962 to 1967. So if you got that, give yourself one extra point. And I have a feeling that you rocked this quiz. And that, friends and neighbors, is a wrap. Hopefully you did really well. If you didn't do really well, hopefully you learned something. If you didn't learn anything, maybe it piqued your interest and it made you want to go out and learn more, made you want to pick up some of those books. But if you memorize, you know, most of this, some of this, whatever, you can impress all your friends on Facebook, because now you'll be able to answer those questions when people go on Facebook and ask, you know, hey, I picked up this plane. I don't know what it is. I don't know anything about it. Now you can impress them with your incredible knowledge. Or like I said, you know, go out and get the books. But just like always, I so appreciate y'all watching my content. And just like last time, I'm going to invite you to share your scores, which, you know, most of y'all didn't. I figure it's probably because you were ashamed because you did so terrible. No, I'm just kidding. But by all means, share your scores if you feel inclined, either here on YouTube or find me on Facebook at Just Plain Fun, the Parts Division. And I definitely look forward to seeing y'all around.